There's always been a general feeling of happiness within the animated shows or animation in general, whether it's the characters being content in a cheery world or the characters overcoming a big obstacle that ends with a feeling of success and contentment. However, one show that takes a different approach and dives into the grim feelings of being lost is the amazing digital Circus. The show follows characters that are, in the best term, trapped in their struggle to survive and try to escape from a world they don't understand. It's also apparent that these characters used to be human, and upon being snatched away by this world, have lost their entire identity. The only thing remaining is their personalities. Their situation reminds me a lot of the character of Samurai Jack by Genndy Tartakovsky, and the tale of a samurai warrior being flung into the future and trying every day to make his way back home and prevent a coup's reign, only to repeatedly fail as the odds are stacked against him. And if you've watched Samurai Jack before, I think this analysis will resonate more with you. This video is going to take a dive into the world of the Amazing Digital Circus, and I'm going to attempt to explain how the Amazing Digital Circus conveys a feeling of hopelessness. Now right away, the show starts us off in the world of the Digital Circus without much explanation, and the only brief bit of exposition we get is when Kane is presenting his quote-unquote show. The prominent element that makes the circus feel so out of control, and for me quite terrifying, is the scale. I honestly challenge you to pause on any long shot or establishing shot of the circus and just take in how big everything is compared to the characters and how small and vulnerable it makes them look. I challenge you to not feel at least a little bit uneasy while looking at that. Even something like a colorful block or a staircase to a stage is greatly expanded, like the circus is trying to make the audience feel a little megalophobia. Also, if you take a look at the circus grounds compared to the void, it also feels so small and insignificant and just lost. It's like the circus just resides on this floating island that exists nowhere. It's the same feeling that Peach's castle has in Super Mario 64. Now, it's explained that the characters have all gone through the grief of being transported here and realizing that there is no exit to the digital circus. It's quite sad when you think about how these people were individually ripped from their homes and trapped in what is essentially a computer program and have lost all memory of themselves, even their names. And these characters all fit into an individual archetype of somebody that you could probably think of in real life, or maybe you can even find in yourself. And even though their individual body structures are something inexplicable, they are still very human characters, and that's what leads people to identify with them when they're sad, angry, show their own flaws, and have moments of weakness coupled with moments of strength. Now, you could argue that these characters are too one-dimensional, but in the context of their situation, I think it's safe to say that their distinct personalities are their individual coping mechanisms to keep themselves strong. It's all those human characteristics that acts as the key to what makes this show so enjoyable, and the fact that the characters are made so likable and relatable, it just makes the audience feel their pain that much more. Now, to talk about some of the characters individually, possibly the most sympathetic example would be with Gangle. She's literally a tragedy mask wearing a comedy mask, which on its own is a great metaphor for depression, and those masks are attached to her riven body, which is probably further emphasis on how fragile her personality actually is. And the main gag with her is her comedy mask keeps breaking, and while the gag is funny, it also functions as a tragedy, to know that no matter what she does, her comedy mask will never stay on for long. Having to live that way is a really powerless feeling, and who knows how many comedy masks she's gone through over the years, and how she was able to keep herself going without abstracting. And in the second episode, she's forced by Jax to drive the truck, then ram it, and have it end up falling into the fudge ravine. And she has that identifiable personality trait of accepting blame for things that really aren't her fault, and much like a real depressed individual, if they feel exhausted by the world beating down on them, they just accept defeat. Her sympathetic character always seems like an uphill battle, and much like Kinger, it's a little hard to imagine how she herself hasn't abstracted yet. Jax is the archetype of a bully, mainly for the purpose of adding to the story. He spends his time harassing the other characters, and rarely does he get a human moment. It's possible that his persona is a mask to keep himself distant to protect himself, but I think it's more likely that he does this as a method of humoring himself to keep himself from going insane. The same way that some people will try to make jokes about a tragedy to lighten the mood. Now, the downside for the other characters is that he adds to the hopelessness that they're already feeling. As the bully character, he's only perpetuating their negative emotions. And the idea that you can be in the most obscure and dark place imaginable and there's still going to be an antagonist makes one ponder about the nature of humanity. Now, it's anyone's guess as to what the team is going to do with Jax in the future, but if he gets worse, he may cause a mental break, and the circus may have to step down to the level of a secondary antagonist. Now, Pomy is meant to be the most relatable character as she is the protagonist to guide us through the story. Her journey is largely left to be explored by the continuation of the show, but what's important is her character actions. She always reacts like a normal person would, and acts as the voice of reason for Kane's antics. And the intro to the second episode introduces the new fear of being forgotten, because when you abstract and nobody cares to remember you, then you truly become dead in the digital circus. She also has that relatable but grating feeling of dealing with several bad days in a row, and I can only imagine what she's feeling after being plucked from Earth and put into a tragic circus where nothing seems to make sense. It's also a brief but sad plot point where Pomy attempts to comfort herself by believing she's in a dream, only for the time to never end and the people around her assuring her that the circus is real. And when she accepts that, her last-ditch attempt of an explanation is shattered, and it's right when she realizes how dangerous this place really is. That feeling overloads at the end of the pilot where Pomy is sitting at the table and the theme song swells and reaches the height of its dramatic crescendo. And all Pomy can do is force herself to make a deranged smile as she accepts that she is truly trapped there. And then the camera zooms out to the same computer she found in the office spaces, implying that all manners of escape will just loop back infinitely. This moment really is quite disturbing to watch. When talking about Pomy's journey, it's impossible to not mention the exit door in the pilot. Now, straight away in the pilot, there exists the elusive exit door that appears and disappears seemingly at random. This alone would be disheartening if it was a normal means of escape, but later on, it's revealed that this door leads to an abstract world of repeating office spaces that seemingly go on forever, until of course it doesn't. This space may do the best job at conveying just how hopeless and, quite frankly, terrifying and claustrophobic the digital circus is, and it physically embodies the anxiety and insanity of chasing an unattainable goal. This moment kind of reminds me of Ragatha's monologue, saying how constantly chasing an unattainable goal will drive you insane. We can see Pomy running through the hallways and how she goes from desperation to irrational, and it's hard to not feel a little devastated for her. There's also a moment that focuses on the computers in the office and the CNA logo. I would theorize that this company created a computer program that pulled people inside, and these motifs are just there to silently mock her characters. Then when she finally reaches somewhere else, it's just a place that's also nowhere. It's the void. And the infinite vastness takes hold of Pomy and it doesn't stop. The void is extremely hypnotizing for the characters, and Pomy's expression shows someone who has completely lost her head. It's then only after Kane rescues her that it's revealed that the exit door was made by him, but he couldn't figure out what to put on the other side, and as that detail is revealed, the hope for finding a way out is completely killed. Lastly, Gummig Go is the best example for existential hopelessness in the entire show that I could find, because his reality is both completely shattered and then built back up in the same episode. In Candy Carrier Chaos, we are told Gummig Go's purpose and his allies, and when he clips under the map and sees the character models, he looks into a dark reflection of himself. It's then that he breaks free from his NPC code that was containing his mind, and he starts to take in the gravity of the situation. He starts to realize that he doesn't even know who he is, he doesn't even remember his mom or his home, and his world and his identity is completely shattered, and his fabricated existence is as clear as the situation he and Pomy share of being trapped under the map. However, when Pomy talks with him and identifies with his pain of feeling like nothing, he looks up and accepts the proposal of creating his own life for himself by joining the digital circus. It's honestly really wholesome, and you're rooting for him the whole way there. Then when he finally enters the circus, he's gone. The role Pomy was playing for him has ended, and Kane does away with him, giving no regard to his life or how Pomy feels. Now, it's not clear if Gummig Go is dead or if he just went elsewhere, but regardless, the prospect of Gummig Go becoming someone real and building a new reality with new friends and living as an individual are completely taken away and out of his control. It's quite heartbreaking to care about someone only to have life take them away in an instant, and what's more is the identity Pomy was carving for herself, and the friends she had made by establishing an emotional connection was now completely in vain. Lastly, I want to touch on the concept of abstraction. Now, to someone who isn't familiar with the roles of the digital circus, the closest thing that they have to death is abstraction. Now, it doesn't kill them per se, but it removes all remnants of that person's personality and humanity and leaves behind a glitchy monster intent on destroying anyone around them. Another detail is that abstraction is also treated as the equivalent to suicide, judging by when Zubul says,
"Man, I can't believe Kaufmo just gave up like that."
perhaps implying that the only way to fully abstract is to let your mind and soul be completely corrupted by the circus. It's as if the circus is an evil, sentient AI intent on causing the inhabitants as much pain as possible. What's more disappointing is that Kaufmo already abstracted before Pomy arrived, while in search of the same exit door that Pomy was looking for. It's never fully explained if Kaufmo abstracted after learning the truth about the door, or if hyperfixating on it was enough to break his mind. But we never get to see what Kaufmo was like as a person, although judging by the other characters' reaction of him, he seemed like a good guy. Lastly, like Gummig Go, Kane just tosses Kaufmo aside with no hesitation, and we can see the many other souls that this has happened to, just waiting in the cellar forever for something to happen. And even though the others are sad, they are forced to accept this banishment because they have no other alternatives. And that, my friends, is how the amazing digital circus conveys hopelessness. I hope I didn't create too many existential thoughts among you, if my analysis is even that good, but the goal was to put the cruel world that is the digital circus into full perspective. Part of me feels hasty or late making this video, but I guess we can pretend that this came out much sooner than it did. I do hope that as the show goes on, Goosworx will reveal more about what the circus is, how it works, and hopefully, like Samurai Jack, our characters will eventually make it back home. This is also my first video essay about a show, and I want to do more in the future if I can find topics I want to talk about, but that's it for now.